Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Hobby Night. I'm Angela, and today I have a reaction video for you. You see, Alanah Pearce has a video where she rants about Warhammer 40k and Space Marine 2. And when I saw the title of this video, it made me go, you know, in all of the content that I have seen Alanah in, I'm actually not sure if I have heard her talk about whether or not she likes Warhammer 40k or not. Now, I do know Alanah is a fan of Halo and that franchise, which does also have Space Marines in it. So I'm going to go into this video with the assumption that this is going to be a relatively positive rant, but I actually don't know. I haven't watched it at all yet. And just before we begin, I want to give a little bit further context. So I actually first ran into Alanah's content when she was working with Funhouse. That's how I discovered her, and since then I've gone to her page every now and then when I want to see like her particular take on certain things happening in the games industry, because I really respect her perspective, and it's always been very like just interesting to me to hear what she has to say, because honestly a lot of the stuff that goes on in the industry was very close to me as my partner worked in that industry for a very long time. And yeah, I find it very valuable to go to her content for that reason. And I think this is going to be a relatively lighthearted video, and it now has me like imagining like, okay, if she does like Warhammer and she's a big fan of Space Marine 2, is there a world where she and I could play Space Marine 2 together? Probably not, but it is a wonderful dream for me to have, and I think we should now begin this video. So, without further ado, let's see what Alanah has to say about Warhammer 40k.
I haven't made a video here in a couple of months because I've been dealing with some personal stuff, but when I was reflecting on that, I realized the God Emperor would not approve, and my excuses are, in fact, heretical.
Oh my god. This woman understands, and I'm immediately further in love. This is great. I can't wait for this rant.
Is what happens to people who are tainted by chaos. For the Emperor!
For the Emperor! Thank you, Alanah.
It's hard being this cool. It's tough. I know you were wondering. In part because
she is just so cool. I mean, can we not all agree?
13 years old. And so it's time.
13? Dude. Okay, so she's been reading the books for a long time. So cool. She's gonna be probably a mega fan. Man, I want to play this game with her. I'm gonna let her. I will let her go. I know. It's probably a little annoying. I keep pausing her. I'm sorry. I'm just very excited. I've always thought Alanah was cool, and I'm sorry. I'm fangirling a little bit, but I kind of think she's even cooler now, and she is just awesome. All right, for the Emperor, let's go forward.
I went on a rant. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm sick of people here on YouTube making videos about stuff they don't like, and in a lot of cases don't even fucking know anything about. 10 videos on a game they haven't even played and have no intention of playing. When they could instead be making videos in the name of the God Emperor about the state of Warhammer and how it's maybe one of the best video game franchises. Like, full stop. But we'll get to that. Today's video is half about why I think Warhammer is awesome in general, and half sort of a ploy to attract people to Warhammer who are like maybe interested but don't really know where to start. Which brings us to a video that I don't really know where to start.
I understand. So this actually isn't a video meant for me at all, as I'm already attracted to Warhammer. So I'm sorry. This clearly was a huge mistake. No, I'm kidding. We're actually going to continue this, but I love that she's doing this. Yes, please, Alanah, help us bring more people into the grace of the God Emperor so that they too can know the glory that is the 41st millennium. This is great.
Because Warhammer is very big and very good. First, if you've never really heard of Warhammer, let me give you a very brief welcome. Warhammer is a tabletop miniature game, or it was. I mean, it still is, but that's how it started, and now it is so much more than that. Which is another thing about how goddamn cool Warhammer is. You don't like tabletop games? Okay, cool. Here's a whole community for painting and building miniature figures. Full
my people! Yes! Oh, Alanah, you're the best.
People never even played the game, and are incredible artists. But say you're not really a painter, not really a thing. No worries, bro. Here are literally hundreds of books with some of the most dense lore that you've ever read. Really, it is such a big world for you to get lost in. I personally have and do make the case that actually Warhammer is the densest fantasy universe that's ever existed, more so than Tolkien.
Alanah, I agree with everything she just said.
You don't like books? Red flag. That's weird, but okay. You have like a whole YouTube ecosystem, a whole
oh my god, yes, there
very
is
fleshed out niche of YouTube
Luton, of
Warhammer
course.
channels that you can fall asleep to or not while somebody takes you on the journey that is Warhammer 40k. And I only mention the sleep thing because
I have absolutely done that. She mentions the sleep thing. I have fallen asleep to Luton videos many times. Guilty. Guilty is charged. Raise your hand in the comments below if you also have fallen asleep to the dulcet tones of Luton telling you lore about the glorious world of Warhammer 40k.
I know some of the Warhammer lore channels intentionally speak in a specific way or show art in a specific way that is meant to lull you into sleep. Like it's like guided meditation Warhammer sleep videos.
Yes, I love it.
And they're great. It's one of the most dense yet simultaneously most accessible franchises in existence. And honestly, what a blessing is that? How wonderful to have something so deep
It is very
and so
accessible.
fulfilling
She's
and so
absolutely right there.
eager for you to jump in. Warhammer does not gatekeep itself. If anything, Games Workshop, who make Warhammer, maybe too eager to get your money however they possibly can. They are...
I'm sorry, what? Yes? Yes, we all agree with that too? They are sometimes a little too eager to just suck all of our dollars away, aren't they? I'm still thinking about the recently previewed Kriegsguardsman and how I want that box set because I kind of adore both the limited edition cover in the box as well as all of those horses, not horses, with their little claw feet that have a stronger AP than a Space Marine combat knife. Isn't that just delightful? Oh my god. But they do just try to drain us of money, and that's the worst. All right, let's continue.
They're certainly not a company that is immune from or even undeserving of criticism, but Warhammer is so cool that I think it continues to rule even beyond the constraints of its money-hungry human overlords, which is actually very Warhammer-coded. Ironic. Is that irony? Who knows? Who's to say? Nobody knows what that is. But really, basically, my point there is you can take as much or as little as you like. You can learn a new skill like painting, or you can read a bunch of books, or you can play a new game, or you can get a new hobby, or you can play a bunch of video games. All through the vessel that is Warhammer. Okay, let me back up. So Warhammer is a tabletop game series set in a science fiction fantasy future, and in the case of Warhammer 40k, which is mostly what I'm talking about today, set around the year 40,000 D. Technically, Warhammer and Warhammer 40k are two different things, but I am in a lot of cases talking about both things here. And sometimes just talking about 40k. This is already too complicated. I'm going to shut up about this. There are orcs, elves, space
Alanah,
wizards, evil space magic, but technology and militia and mechanical functions as well. And it is a huge...
Okay, I'm going to pause her very briefly. I love this history lesson. I'm adoring this. God, Alanah, thank you for making this video. This is delightful. I love that she's showing such ancient miniatures, which is just great. Like going through, I mean, because I know she's going through the various eras, but like I feel like she's picked and choose some really solid miniatures to showcase. And some additionally solid, fantastic artwork, or I guess clips from the 25 years of Warhammer 40k. But like, these are great. These are fantastic. Loving this video so far.
Bomber of a setting and story. Warhammer is referred to
also,
as and uses the term grimdark to define its genre, and its setting basically has humans in a never-ending war against alien races. All human progress that is not in service of war has ceased, and virtually no good exists. The humans even know that. Like, they're not fighting to save humanity in the Warhammer universe. They know that humanity doesn't stand a chance in the long run. They're just fighting to show how angry they are that everything sucks. And just delaying the end of the Imperium of Man, as mankind is basically called, for as long as possible. But they know they're screwed. It's very metal. If you'd really like to have a lore overview, I am not an expert in this, and frankly, I think it's very hard to call yourself an expert in Warhammer lore in general. I would direct you to my personal favorite Warhammer YouTuber, Luton09. I'll leave a link in the description. There are many to pick from, but he is my favorite. And while I do really encourage you to go check out Luton and just pick a video and dive into whatever part of Warhammer might interest you, let me tell you about my two favorite Warhammer lore tidbits to kick things off. Firstly, the orcs in Warhammer are, you know, orcs.
I am shocked that Alanah is an Orcs fan. Of course she's an Orc fan. Okay, I mean, I can't really say anything. I'm also an Orc fan, and like honestly, most people I know are into the Orcs, so it's really not that surprising, but like, Alanah, we would have so much to talk about.
They're space orcs. They are the most successful and powerful race by a mile for a bunch of very fun reasons. They also don't just win and dominate everything, even though they are absolutely OP, for a bunch more fun reasons. Firstly, orcs completely asexual. They specifically reproduce like a fungus. They are war mushrooms. They release these fungus spores that grow underground, and they have this whole life cycle. These things that grow into plants that then become orcs, and it's fully self-sustaining. So no matter where they are releasing this fungus at all times that is creating this generating ecosystem of orc production. They actually release the
glorious creatures that they are. I do love them.
most fungus when they die, meaning that if you kill an orc, you just made a bunch more orcs. They're also so unbelievably self-sustaining that their medics, who are called pain boys with a Z, they're really dumb and use really outdated tech, but it kind of doesn't matter because orcs barely feel pain. Today's sponsor is not a Warhammer game. We're talking about Dungeon Inn from developer Cat Society and publisher Spiral Up Games. Some of you may have seen me stream this game or below, or you can participate in another orc's body, and it would accept that it would adapt and it would live just fine. They can survive virtually any injury. The only way to get rid of orcs once they've existed on a certain planet is to destroy the entire planet. All life must be gone, otherwise orcs will live on forever. The infinite, self-sustaining, self-sufficient war mushroom. All it does is war and reproduce and facilitate said war and reproduction. You thought that was too OP? But wait, there's more. I'm not going to get too deep into how this functions right now because it's a lot, but orcs have like a collective psychic ability. When a bunch of them believe something to be true, it is. For example, if all orcs came together and at some point for some reason started to believe that mankind had been completely wiped out, that would be correct. All of mankind would be gone. They just haven't thought of that. Or they just don't believe that, so it's not true.
She's right. Oh my god, why has... There's surely some clever orc out there, some clever war boss has thought and tried... Maybe it's because they've seen the ships, they know they're still out there. But like if you could, but since the orcs do believe, my god, my mind is blown. I'll have to think about this more later, but like legitimately, I've never thought about that, but imagine if all the orcs just imagined that the Imperium of Man was wiped out and then they just poofed. Like, would the Emperor in his like, on his golden throne, would he be able to prevent that from happening? I don't know. Oh, what a question. Okay, I genuinely, I'm going to be thinking about this for so long, but we must continue.
The thing that they did succeed on, which is a really common example, is that they thought that if rockets had yellow flames painted on them, it would make them work better and cause bigger explosions. And so it does. If you paint a yellow flame on a rocket, it will explode bigger. Orcs are, in essence, the most formidable Warhammer race. They haven't changed in millions of years because they are considered to be biologically perfect organisms. They're also really stupid, and they don't know that. So they tend to just accidentally kill each other and fight a lot and die because all they consciously care about is fighting. It's incredible. I love them
for that.
Perfect organism. Too dumb to do anything with it. I love it. Second fun lore fact, which is such a funny thing to call fun by virtue of what it is, but there's something called the Adeptus Administratum, which is basically mankind's like...
Okay, wait a minute. Okay. Alanah, you wonderful human being, you. You go from... Here's the two lore bits that I'm going to drop on people that I really like. Orcs, okay? Expected. I love it. Almost stereotypical of people to, like, call out the orcs, right? Your second lore drop, the Adeptus, and you might think she's going to say, like, Militarum, the Adeptus Sororitas, the Adeptus Astartes, perhaps, you know, the Space Marines, but no. Instead, who does she want to signal out in all of Warhammer 40k? The Adeptus Administratum. Bureaucracy. Please explain.
Future administrative division. It's like government or government admin, basically. Exciting stuff. I know. Thank you if you're still
yes,
here.
Please, tell me
Emperor,
more.
Am I right? It's basically the place where people do office stuff to make sure that the Imperium of Man continues to war effectively. And it is huge. There are billions of administrative staff members working for the Administratum, literally non-stop, no breaks at all.
Yes.
And they will do until they die, just to manage the Imperium. Many of them have never even been outside the Adeptus Administratum. They don't even really know what they're managing. It's basically every single thing you could think of that applies to government all in this one contained unit. They're working on population censuses. They're building war fleets. They're recording information. They're editing information. Everything. And because it's so big and so incredibly bloated, there are entire departments that have become completely useless in the Adeptus Administratum, but they don't know that, or like maybe the thing that they were originally set up for doesn't exist anymore, but there's no way to really communicate that efficiently when you have this team of 1 billion people. There are departments that have millions of workers who may have been chasing a paper trail on loop for hundreds of years. To be clear, the Adeptus Administratum
inefficiency, like, do you think the inefficiency amuses her? I'm trying to figure out, like, what about this... I guess it's just the extremity of it.
Also succeed. Like, mankind is continuing to do war effectively, but most of it is just government bloat bullshit. At the same time, the Administratum totally thinks, in some cases even correctly, that it is the most important thing to ever exist. Like, everyone involved really believes that the tiny, impossible to track tidbits of their nightmarishly complex bureaucratic system is the most important thing in the universe.
Very true.
And yet they still aren't perfect. The Administratum has accidentally lost a world before due to administrative error, meaning that a planet is just immediately and without communication basically excommunicated, like just...
Look, Alanah. Mistakes happen. Okay, as a current rogue trader who has 3 planets that I've lost communication with, these things happen. And sometimes I don't plan on this happening to me, of course. I am a brilliant rogue trader and I will successfully save all of my planets. I don't want you to mistake me, but I have heard that these things happen and... Well, I mean, as long as those that cause these things to happen are thoroughly punished, then I really think it is fine. But, you know, continue.
Completely cut off from all life, all of a sudden, never to be returned. Poof. Oops. An accounting error. I don't know why I find the Administratum specifically so interesting, but I do. All that to say, it's a giant rabbit hole that you, on your first day of searching, could find something that I have never even heard of, despite that I have been reading Warhammer half of my life. Like, how cool that I've just spoken to you for several minutes straight about Warhammer stuff that I find really cool or interesting without even mentioning the Emperor or what he does. Like, that's usually where most things would start. There's so many interesting things that are
a lot of people
so
just go straight to the
fleshed
Emperor
out that I don't have to tell you about the Emperor. Apologize again for the heresy. It's just like for Warhammer, wherever you start, you can find this incredibly rich, interesting gem of a thing. I just told you about the future version of government admin passionately. You know what I mean? Now, with a bunch of lore stuff that I do have to tell you,
Alanah,
and please don't be too scared of this, Warhammer does not have any official canon. Or rather, everything is canon. It's part of the appeal that some things may be true and some things may not be. Gav Thorpe, who was a game designer at Games Workshop from 1994 to 2008, and has written several Warhammer books called The Notion of Canon in Warhammer, a Fallacy. It has hundreds of authors. There are thousands of stories. It is so big. There's so much of it, and there are occasional inconsistencies, but I really like the way they deal with it.
Occasional. Sometimes. More occasional than not. But, you know, honestly, I do think in the lore, they're pretty good. I just don't think they translate all of that properly into their rule sets every now and then, and it just causes problems. I need to find this. I've actually not heard of this, and I would be very interested to read this article. So I'll have to see if she leaves a link to this in the video.
The official explanation is that everything is official, but that all the stories that are being written aren't necessarily true or could be based on rumors or are coming from bad sources. It might be a legend of what actually happened or a rumor of what actually happened. Passed down until the truth was diluted, just like the things that happen in the Administratum. That's not to say that there aren't things that the community accepts as canon and characters that are accepted as canon. Like, that totally is a thing. It's just sort of a giant universe where they treat it as like a who's to say who's telling the truth. And again, I know that might sound off-putting to some people, but yeah, I just look at it as this huge universe toy box that everyone is welcome to play in. And I feel like because there's no overlord lore master trying to keep track of everything, which what an awful job that would be anyway. It's just so much. people get to be a lot more creative. There are more crazy stories that come out of Warhammer that come out of a lot of universes like this, because there isn't some cabal Disney really strictly making sure that every story is about Skywalkers. People are encouraged to get really...
Wow, throwing some shade there, aren't you, Alanah? You know, to be fair though, I completely agree with her. Although I will say, just to like play devil's advocate, I guess a little bit, even though it's really unnecessary, when it comes to 40k like lore, they do have some restrictions on whenever they're licensing out people to be able to tell stories, especially when it comes to their video games and like other, basically any game that they are not specifically controlling, they do put limitations on what can be affected by the stories being told in those games. And of course, this isn't going to matter in something like, say, like Speed Freaks or, what was that? Blood Teeth, Shoota's Blood and Teeth or whatever? That one other orc game that was the Shoota. Really, really fun, but I don't remember the full 3 words that made up the title. And so, like, it doesn't really matter so much in those, but like, say, in Rogue Trader, like, they're never going to go to Terra in Rogue Trader because that's a off-limits zone. No one's allowed to touch that because it would impact too many other things and make too many other things inaccurate. So they do put some limitations, but like that's just nitpicking and really not important to what she's specifically trying to do with this particular video, which again, Alanah, I'm loving this. Thank you so much.
Big and bold and outlandish with their ideas, and that makes for a lot of very fun books. Now, off of that, I want to give you one book recommendation. There are many books in the Warhammer universe. Some are bad, some are excellent. I'm giving you like the easiest, the popular pick, I think. I recommend Horus Rising. This is a book that begins telling a story of a particular era of...
Okay, I mean, don't get me wrong. Anytime anybody ever who is brand new and is like, I've never read any of the Horus Heresy books, where should I start? I do tell people to go with the first 3, which does start with Horus Rising. But this is not exactly where I was expecting her to go.
Of Warhammer's Imperium of Man, where someone tried to overthrow the Emperor, his own son, in fact. There are 64 books, but I'm not telling you to read them all, and the timeline of the books becomes a nightmare kind of quickly, but
yes,
just start with Horus Rising. I'll leave a link in the description, and you can either continue on that path, or you can find something or someone that you find interesting in that book and go on a path of your own completely. It's like choose your own adventure Warhammer universe. My final recommendations are things that I put a lot of time into, and I think are probably just really easy for anyone watching this video to tackle. Warhammer 40k video games. I'm going to leave this video by giving you 5 very different but very solid Warhammer 40k video games, all of which are vastly different in genre. So I promise at least one of them will be up your alley if this is something that you want to dive into. And I'm only giving you 5 recent ones for the record. There are way more than just this, but let's do it. First up, and most recently lauded, so it shouldn't be surprising, is Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 is a very Gears of War-esque third-person shooter, which is an interesting sentence, because Gears of War is openly inspired by Warhammer. It has all the third-person shooter staples, but I think elevates every single one of them. You've got melee combat, but instead of just a button tap to smack somebody, it has this full hack-and-slash system, complete with timing-based parries or unblockable attacks you have to dodge roll away from. There's a Halo meets Doom-style health system, where if your armor breaks, you'll start losing health, which you can replenish via medkits, and the only way to get armor back is by performing executions. Basically, I think Space Marine 2 takes the best of a lot of games in its genre or similar genres and combines it all into one really impressive creative package. It didn't have to do all that. You could have just made me shoot some Tyranids, but it did, and I love it for that. Before playing it, I was worried Space Marine 2 would get a little repetitive, but I think it avoids that with diverse levels with giant and really pretty skyboxes. Genuinely, it is a stunning game. A tight campaign with a well-paced, simple but engaging story, and some actually fun traversal sort of platforming segments. The campaign also has 4-player co-op, and there are a bunch of multiplayer modes which are continuing to be updated. It's very reminiscent of the 360 era of games, where it really feels like the team at Saber Interactive understood exactly what game they wanted to make and did it. It's not also an RPG or also an MMO like a lot of shooters are trying to be these days, but it's also not just a third-person shooter. Now, have you heard...
Okay, I have to pause her because, of course, she was going to talk about Space Marine 2. Who doesn't talk about Space Marine 2 when it comes to recommendations for video games if you're a fan of Warhammer or you just want to get into Warhammer? Space Marine and Space Marine 2 are a great jumping in point. Fantastic games. I love listening to this woman talk about games. Like, it is just so delightful, and I just had to pause and say that because, like, hearing her gush about Space Marine 2, but being able to just seamlessly articulate how it is similar to various games and describing its genre and all of that, just mwah, so good.
Heard of Baldur's Gate 3? Well, that's not a Warhammer game, but Rogue Trader is.
Yes!
It is a lot like Baldur's.
Okay, I was really hoping she was going to talk about Rogue Trader because I feel like this is a highly underrated game for like how good it is, and as I am currently playing it on the channel. In fact, I played it earlier today just before filming this, and I'm working on the Void DLC with the Spinnerweb Death Cult. Oh, it's so good. I'm very much enjoying myself. I was hoping she was going to bring this game up, so yes, thank you, Alanah. Thank you. Bring more attention to this game. I think Owlcat deserves it, and I want more people playing it so that there's just more mods, and maybe they'll do a second one down the line, and we can take a whole new path, and one day we can romance the sister. I just want to be able to romance Virginta, man.
History and, many other games in the D&D style traditional CRPG genre, but it's set, of course, in the Warhammer universe. Made by developer Owlcat, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader is genuinely very well written. The tone of this game is what really sells it for me. It is tonally
my vocabulary
perfect.
Has expanded
the setting
immensely.
is so well realized, and it has a big focus on player actions impacting the world around them. I feel like so many games claim to do that phrase is almost meaningless at this point.
No,
but
it does.
do tend to do it very well, and Rogue Trader certainly does. People will tell you Rogue Trader has some probably needlessly complex systems, but I personally actually really like that. You may not, depends on your taste, but I'm a huge fan of the complexity.
So, the complex systems primarily comes from the fact that Owlcat is lifting the original RPG system that was developed by originally Warhammer themselves in Games Workshop, but then iterated on and updated by Fantasy Flight Games through the Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, Only War, and there's like two other ones and I'm blanking on their names right now. There's a number of core books for various systems set in the 40k RPG system, and that is what Rogue Trader is literally lifting from, much in the same way that I believe Owlcat literally lifted the system from Pathfinder for their Pathfinder games. And I personally love it, and because I have played the tabletop versions of Rogue Trader and Dark Heresy, I do understand the system. It's a D100 system, so yes, it has some mild complexities, and there's some algebraic formulas in some of the descriptions of what's going on, but frankly, the community has made it really easy to understand everything if you aren't 100% following it, or you just kind of find it mind-boggling to look at, because it is a lot of text. Good lord, there's a lot of reading, and there's a lot of speaking aloud if you're Let's Playing it like I have been doing. But my gosh, it is such a delightfully fun game, and I'm so glad she agrees.
Of this game. Basically, it's a big, dense, 100-hour RPG that's very easy to get lost in. Also featuring co-op multiplayer, which I love.
Argenta!
Basically, if you like Baldur's Gate and you want to get into Warhammer, try Rogue Trader. Next up is one of the very few online multiplayer games I have consistently returned to over the past few years. Warhammer 40k Darktide. This is a sort of spin-off to the also popular and good Warhammer Vermintide series, which I'm not going to talk about as part of this list because there are too many Warhammer games and I don't have time to get to them all. Darktide is very Left 4 Dead-y in that it's a 4-player co-op game where you fight waves of AI-controlled enemies as you make your way through a variety of levels with a bit of looter-shooter mixed in. You can fully customize your character, not only in appearance, both in the character creator, but also through unlocking new gear and equipment, but also with a full sort of Diablo-style skill tree. There are 4 different classes, a bunch of different maps, and different mission styles, a crafting mechanic, optional objectives, fully active cutscenes, it goes on and on. Darktide did have a bit of a rough launch, technically speaking, but Fat Shark have done a very good job of fixing both issues and consistently providing new content. And while I could personally do without some of the MMO-style elements, it is a really sharp, fun co-op shooter. Legitimately some of the most fun multiplayer gaming experiences I've had in years. Next up is Boltgun. Boltgun is a boomer shooter, basically meaning it's a lot like the original Doom, for example, except, you guessed it, Warhammer. It's a very
Yay!
nostalgic, arcadey
It
art
is.
style
If you
with
like
a whole lot
Doom,
of color.
but you like
can sprint
Warhammer,
right past
this will be
thanks to its
perfect for
fast
you.
pace. It is at its core a really smooth, arcadey shooter with some nice weapon variety, and again, like Doom, often has a correct weapon for a correct situation, which is a gameplay consideration I've personally always loved. While I think Auric Digital did a great job with their first ever shooter, it is worth noting that level design is this game's weak point. I almost want to tell you to play it to have boomer shooting fun, but with the caveat that I wouldn't judge you if you didn't finish it. I wasn't sure which game to end with because there are legitimately so many.
Okay, to just like, because she didn't really follow up on that, I would kind of agree. Like, as much as I do love Bolt Gun, it is mildly repetitive, and there are only so many enemies. So which just adds to the repetitiveness of it. So take that with a grain of salt. If you find that boring, then you may not end up finishing the game. But you'll still get the full flavor of it because, honestly, I feel like you get the full gist within like at least the first two levels. But I mean, you don't have to finish it necessarily. I actually did not finish it, I don't believe. Did I finish it on camera? I don't think I did. All right, let's continue. What's our last
Different
game?
genres? Do I go with orc-focused 2D
This is the one,
action
shooters,
adventure
blood,
game
and
Blood,
teeth.
Shooters, and Teeth, or American football-esque Blood Bowl, or
Blood Bowl!
positively
Demon
reviewed
Gate!
time-based tactics/strategy game
Or Chaos Gate!
No. Instead, I've decided to go with Power Wash Simulator. I love Power Wash Simulator. I finished the entire base game in which literally all you do is power wash stuff. That's it. I find it super meditative to jump into this game and power wash some dirty things. You just sit there.
I love it.
This
is a perfect
and they've
list.
had some great DLC, including, you guessed it,
This list gets
Warhammer.
the full
The Power Wash Simulator
Hobby Night
Warhammer
stamp of
40k
approval.
special pack is just especially cool because what you're largely power washing are things that otherwise exist as miniature figures for the tabletop game. They're incorrect scale, as though you were an adept, and it's set in the classic, very gothic, grim, dark halls of a temple. It's fun as a Warhammer fan because it's like getting to be a part of one of the more boring jobs that might exist in the Warhammer universe. Like, you're literally just a guy who power washes stuff, but it's also very cool to see a lot of the universe's intricate.
Okay, first of all, sure, it's a boring job in the Imperium, but it's also probably hella safe, relatively cushy, all things considered. Because he's still he's still part of the Adeptus Mechanicus. All right, you're an adept. So, frankly, I feel like it's a probably fine job, and I would take it.
Vehicles up close on a large scale, and again,
but I also want to be
so
a
different to every other game.
I mean, I want to be a space marine,
okay,
but I know
this
that's
is a very
impossible.
dense video. I'm just hoping I can keep it under 30 minutes. Did I do that? Let me know in the comments below. But it has
yes,
to be done.
Alanah, I can in fact tell you that you did in fact keep it under 30 minutes. You in fact kept it slightly under 20 minutes. So good on you.
It's because we're talking about Warhammer. It's the brainchild of hundreds and hundreds of creative minds, authors, writers, artists that all come together to contribute to this franchise with equal weight. They're all just as important as one another, to make something that is just like so rich and so dense and so unique. It's so broad that it's hard to wrap your head around in some ways, but I find that
sometimes
so
it's
exciting. It's just, Warhammer's so fun and so cool, and has recently built up this really nice camaraderie. I don't think it was this way when I got into it when I was younger.
It probably was not, because I know that there was definitely some animosity when I joined the scene, although I was very lucky. And when I first joined, I was in a very generally welcoming community, so that was great. But yeah, if considering how long ago how long you've said you've been into it, probably
but like,
not.
there's definitely this thing now that even the most casual fans can get into without even needing to know that much. Like, all it takes is for someone to call you brother, or say for the Emperor, and you know you're home. So welcome home, brother.
Thank you, Alanah. Welcome home, brothers. Oh my gosh. Okay, legitimately, I just want to applaud Alanah for this video. I appreciate her taking the time to put this together, gush about her fandom of Warhammer 40k. It genuinely has brought a little bit of a tear to my eye. I am so happy. This was fun, and I hope that you enjoyed getting to see my reaction to it. I loved this. I also legitimately 100% stamp of approval on all of her game suggestions, because I think each of them are varied. I think all of them are very fun. I personally have tried, and if not completed, all of them And I will even say to a couple that she showed as the like, do I talk about these ones with the blood teeth, the shoot of bloods and teeth, or demon hunters, or Blood Bowl? I would also recommend those. I would say for Blood Bowl 2 probably would be my strongest recommendation because there are multiple variations of that game. And 2 I just think is the best, but I have heard that 3 has had some improvements because it, kind of like Darktide and a number of these other ones, had a little bit of a rocky start. And I think they've addressed a number of those things. So definitely highly recommend if you are unfamiliar with Warhammer 40k, maybe you're interested in getting into it, but you don't want to get bogged down in all of the immense lore that comes in the books, and you're not particularly a tabletop fan, which, how did you get here? I'm a little confused by that, but welcome. Welcome regardless. Then I definitely think these games are a great recommendation, and Space Marine 2 especially, but also Rogue Trader. Just both of them, phenomenal games. I'm absolutely loving them. Alanah, you probably will not be seeing this video, so I don't know why I'm thanking you personally, but thank you for putting this video together. I genuinely hope that it has brought some people into the fold of Warhammer 40k for the Emperor. And brothers, I will see you next time. Before I head out, I just want to give a huge thank you to my patrons and YouTube members. Without your guys' support, we wouldn't be doing this, so thank you very, very much. And until next time, I have been Angela, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful hobby night. Bye, everybody.